Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rebecca, otherwise known as Hypnot Hooray Online, and this is podcast episode 18. So in this episode, I have quite a few finished objects to share because I've been working away on all the ornaments. So I have a finished test knit, I have the ornaments that I wanted to share, I have some progress on some ongoing whips, and I have 2 new cast-ons as well. So maybe we can just get into the finished objects. I wanted to chat first about the test knit, which is the penny tote bag, which is a test for Kate of Morka Knit. So the penny tote bag is an all-over textured moss stitch tote bag knit in boucle yarn. It is an all-over texture, but I think because of the boucle you can't really see it that well. But yes, all-over texture knit on 4mm needles. So I really like the bag. I'm really happy with it. I didn't sew in the fabric lining, but I'll get into that in the next little bit. But I'll start with the yarn that I used. So the yarn was gifted for this test knit. Really thankful for the opportunity to try out this yarn from Woolfolk. So it is Woolfolk Flet Bulky, and this is the leftovers that I have of the 3rd skein. So you need 3 skeins to knit the size of a tote bag. And I knit the bag in FB00, which is I think just their natural shade. And this yarn is really interesting. Like I said, I was really thankful to try out this yarn because I had never tried any yarn from Woolfolk before. It's a bit on the pricier side, but I also think that this yarn is super unique. So it's a boucle yarn that is, I guess, 2-plied. It's 100% merino, and there's a thinner merino strand in the middle, and then there's this kind of loose merino fiber that's wrapped around that main yarn. So I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but it creates a really unique boucle fabric. And for the tote bag, because it's such a thick boucle, you just need to hold 1 strand. I know that I have knit previous boucle projects in the past, and I think it is kind of common when you work with boucle, if you want it to be like a really squishy fabric, you knit with 2 strands of boucle, but because this is already so lofty and thick, you just need the 1 strand. So in terms of the construction of this bag, it's knit from the bottom up, and you start off by knitting a pretty narrow rectangular base. So you cast on here and then you work outwards. So you work one side of the base and then you put those stitches on hold, and then you work the other side, and then you pick up stitches all the way around. And like I said, then once you join in the round and you pick up all the stitches, then you're working the moss stitch all the way around, and you're just working in the round. And then once you get to the top, you cast off stitches, and then you're working one side of the strap, and then you do the same thing for the other side, and then you bind it together at the top in a 3 stitch, but a 3 needle bind off at the top. So it creates a pretty clean finish at the top, and then this is what the inside looks like. I do like the 3 stitch, or sorry, I keep saying 3 stitch. I like the 3 needle bind off because I think it does create a really secure seam at the top. And there are seams integrated throughout the design. So I thought that the design was really intentional and thoughtful for a bag, I guess you could say, because there is the base of the bag that you construct separately that has a seam in the middle because of where you cast on the stitches, and then while you're working in the round here, you have seam stitches on either side of the bag here by slipping stitches. So it's going to be hard to see in boucle, but I don't know if you'll be able to see, but there's a slip stitch right in the middle that you do on either sides of the bag to create some more structure. And then that's also integrated as you work the side of the bag here, and then there's the seam at the top through the 3 needle bind off. And so I thought that that created a lot of structure to the bag, as well as the moss stitch. You can't really see it in boucle, but I think that the moss stitch is kind of more woven, so it creates a stronger fabric as well. So I think that the bag is constructed really sturdy, but I did find I had a little bit of difficulty during the pattern test to understand the instructions. And I think that there's one other test knitter that maybe also felt the same, but I don't think a lot of other test knitters had this experience. So I think maybe it's kind of like a me thing, or just how people may read the pattern. So how the moss stitch is described at the beginning of the pattern, where there's the description of the techniques. Moss stitch is described in a 4-row repeat, which is kind of how I'm used to reading moss stitch. I've worked moss stitch before in some other patterns, so I was used to it being described in 4 rows. But then in the actual pattern itself, the moss stitch is described in 2 rows. And I think that it works out because I think other test knitters didn't have that experience, but I was a little bit confused when the moss stitch was described in 2 rows rather than 4 rows. So I kind of just didn't follow that part of the instructions except for the slip stitches in those rows, and I've kind of looked at the pattern instructions for the moss stitch technique and then just did that throughout the bag because it's just in the round, so I didn't really need to look at that 2-row repeat for like decreases or shaping or anything like that. But I did find that part of the pattern a little bit confusing. Apart from that, I thought that it was really well written. It was very clear. There are video techniques in the pattern as well, and this is my first time knitting a pattern from Orca Knit. So other than, that 2-stitch, I was just a bit confused by that. I thought that the pattern was well written. The pattern test period was pretty quick. It was 2 weeks, so within that period I finished the bag, but I wasn't able to sew in the lining, and as you can see, it's still not sewn in because I've been really busy knitting away at all the ornaments for the 2 markets that I had. So I didn't sew in the lining yet, and I don't know if I will in the next few weeks. I might in the new year when I finish my Marie pillow and then I sew in the lining for the Marie pillow, then maybe I'll do the bag lining at the same time. But I've been using it as a project bag, so I haven't really found that I really needed to reinforce it that much, but I do think that sewing in the lining would be an important part of making this bag last a little bit longer, so you're not putting too much stress on the handles and things aren't poking through. But as a project bag that I've brought around to like a park or a cafe, I haven't really had any issue yet without the lining, but I do need to sew that in. So overall, I thought this bag has a really intuitive and smart construction technique for a bag. And for the yarn, I mentioned it a little bit earlier on in the episode, but it is a pricier yarn. It's around $40 for every skein, and I needed to use 3 skeins, or I had to dip into this 3rd one to knit this bag. So overall, it would be a $120 project for this bag, which is definitely pricey. Some of my sweaters, I don't even spend $120 on the yarn for it. And I guess you could say with an accessory like this, with a bag, you may get more cost per wear if you use this bag a lot, so it could be worth it to spend a little bit more, but it is pricey for a bag in my opinion. However, that being said, I think that the yarn is really unique, and you wouldn't really be able to get this texture or this fabric without using this yarn, I guess. I've used Knit Picks alpaca boucle, and even holding that double, maybe even triple, I don't think you would get such a dense and thick fabric, I guess, with even holding 3 strands of that. So in a way, if you were holding 3 strands of boucle versus just buying 1 single skein of this flat bulky, it could be worth it, especially because of the finished fabric. I don't think you would have gotten this with like a thinner boucle. So I would recommend the yarn. I am intrigued to try it for a smaller skein project because I have some leftovers. So I'm thinking eventually, I saw they have it at the Knitting Loft when there's a sale, and I have a gift card. I may pick up another skein and then knit another smaller accessory with the rest of this yarn because I do really like how it feels. I don't really love working with boucle, so it's pricey, so I wouldn't probably get a lot of skeins to knit a big project because it's expensive, but I also just don't love working with boucle, so I would stick to smaller projects with this yarn. But I do think that it could be worth it if you want the look, but it is a bit of a pricier yarn. So that is my thoughts on the penny tote bag. It's a really cool tote bag. I feel like bags and other accessories like that, there's not a ton of knitting patterns out there, and this one is just, I feel like it's really modern, it's very classic style, and it's a pretty quick knit. So moving on to all of the ornaments that I have been making. Not that I wasn't excited about the tote bag, but I feel like I just get very excited when I talk about ornaments. You can already see like my expressions have changed a little bit, but I've been knitting all the ornaments for upcoming markets that I have. So I had 2 markets in early November. I had one on November 2nd called the Market, and then I had one on November 10th called the Me Plus Art Market. And I was thinking since July that I wanted to do a local pop-up market, and so I don't know if it was maybe the November 2nd one may have been a little bit too early for Christmas ornaments. That was a comment that a lot of people had when they saw the ornaments that I knit. They thought they were really cute, but they hadn't even thought about putting up their Christmas tree yet. And I even had friends that were going out still for Halloween weekend on the November 2nd Saturday. So yeah, it may have been too early, but it was really great to get some experience just chatting about knitting. People had a lot of questions about the yarn that I use and like how long things take me. And so it was really interesting to talk to non-knitters or non-crafters, I guess, about like knitting these small items like this. And I think a lot of them didn't realize how much time knitting takes. Like they see such a small ornament and they think it doesn't take too long. I also think that I priced them pretty low as well. Like it wasn't, I'm not really valuing my time in terms of how much I'm pricing the ornaments, because I know there's only so much that people will pay for a single ornament on a tree or like a keychain. So it's not totally reflective of the amount of time that it takes to knit and construct them, but for me it's a really fun exercise. I love being able to use up stash yarn and just talk about my knitting and my creations. So yeah, it was really fun to talk to people at those markets, and I have one more coming up November 30th to December 1st weekend called the Welcome Market, which is a really fantastic market in Toronto. I'm really excited to be a vendor because I have attended that market for several years now as a customer. So I have that one coming up. So I'm still knitting away at the ornaments, but I did want to share kind of the highlights of the ones that I've been making. I won't share all of them, but yeah, some of my favorites. So I'll start off with maybe the sweaters. So I have been making a lot of these sweaters because it's really great to be able to experiment with color, and in a way it's been helpful for me to see what kind of color combinations that I like, because these sweaters take a few hours to knit, so really you can see how it all comes together in a few hours, and then I'll see if I like it in a larger sweater for myself. So I've been knitting a few of these mini crop puff sweaters, which is a free pattern by the Wandering Flock. So the original sweater doesn't have stripes, so I just added in the stripes, but in order to do that I made a few modifications. So I sized up to 3mm needles, because for most of these I've been holding fingering and mohair together, so I just think it's a better gauge on 3mm needles. And I've also been adding the stripes, so in order to do that and get the placement how I wanted, I also changed how deep I work the raglan on these sweaters, and also how long I work the arms as well on the sweater. So the proportions and the needle size are a little bit different from that pattern, but I'll put the notes in my Ravelry project pages. Maybe I'll just do one project page for all of these because they're all basically the same. But I did make some modifications. So this one is my personal favorite. It's blue and red. I think it's just such a classic color combination, and this is kind of how I realized, oh, I actually kind of want a sweater like this for myself in the future. I'm thinking maybe the festival sweater would be really cool. So I have this blue and red one. This one's been really fun. It's a orange and light blue one. And these are the scraps from my Candyland scarf that I knit earlier on this year. So it's nice to be able to use up most of that. I have this purple and chartreuse one, which is really fun. And I've had this purple yarn in my stash for probably 5 years now, maybe even longer. So I'm glad to finally use it because I realized it's not a color that I would wear, but it's really fun for an ornament. And then I have a classic brown and white. And then I use the yarn that my boyfriend got for me from Denmark for this little crop sweater here, which is really fun. So this has been a really fun pattern, a great way to use up scraps as well. So that's the first ornament that I made. The second one that I wanted to chat about, which has definitely been the most popular at markets, is the mushrooms. I think people just really like mushrooms, myself included. So I'm using the Christmas Toadstools pattern by Marin Curley, but I have modified it to increase the needle size. So I'm using a 3.5 millimeter needle, and I think in the pattern it's 3.25. So pretty nominal difference, but I also worked 2 additional sets of increases along the bottom of the toadstool to make them a little bit more bigger and plump. Yeah, I just like the shape of that better. And then I had to work some more decreases along the top to account for the extra stitches. So these have been super popular, and these ones in particular people get really intrigued by because I mentioned that the yarn is from Japan. It's Noro Silk Garden Sock Solo yarn, and people love all the different combinations. And I try to describe how the yarn is made because it's a single ply, and I think maybe I lose people in the technical discussion of yarn, but they always find it really cool. And I guess all the colors too. So this one has been really popular, and it's a really fun pattern, and I just stuffed them with a pillow insert I just use the stuffing from that. So these ones have been really fun. The next ones are these houses by Agatutac. It's called the Little Cottage, I think, by Agatutac. These ones also sized up. I try to size up where I can for these ornaments so they're a little bit quicker, but I also still like the smaller gauge. So these ones are on 4 millimeter needles, and yeah, they're knit from the bottom up. You knit in the round here, and then you switch, and then you work decreases to shape the roof of the cottage. And then I just embroider a little door on the front in the middle. So these ones have been really fun. And then the next one are these rainbows, which is a pattern by Amanda Berry. I really like Amanda Berry's designs for all of the ornament patterns. She does design them to be knit flat and seamed, and sometimes even 2 panels flat and seamed, which I really don't enjoy. So for this rainbow pattern, that's how it's constructed. You knit 2 panels identically, and then you seam them together. And yeah, I didn't want to do that, so I modified this pattern. So I increased the needle size. I worked these on 3.5 millimeter needles, and I also cast on and joined it in the round. So I cast on from the top of the rainbow here, joined it in the round, and was basically working this loop and working the decreases, and then cast off still in the round at the bottom. And then I just had to Kitchener stitch the bottom of the rainbow and then Kitchener stitch the top of the rainbow together at the end while stuffing it again with the pillow insert stuffing. So I prefer it. I think Amanda Berry has 2 rainbow patterns. I want to say one of them is called Rainbow ! I think. And then this one is called the Mini Rainbow. And when I was looking at how they were constructed, I preferred this one because I think this one has a more of a curved shape to it. The other one seemed a little bit more like flat like that. So I think it's just whatever look that you prefer, but I like that one. So I knit a few variations of it. I knit a very classic rainbow. Oh, and this is where I wanted to show that I also got keychains because I had a friend, and then my sister also mentioned when she came by the market that she would prefer if a mushroom was on a keychain so she could put it on her keys. And I never really thought about that, but I know that, yeah, some people would prefer to use them year round. Some people don't celebrate Christmas. Some people don't have room. Like me, I barely have room for a Christmas tree in my apartment. So I did get some of these keychains. It's just like a ball and clasp one, which I thought was easy to insert into a knit fabric. So I just threaded it through here, and then you secure it through that little ball and chain. And then I also got these larger lobster clasps, and then I just attached it as well. And these have been really fun. People like the little mushrooms on a keychain, which is a great idea for my sister. But yeah, I'm really happy about that. So some of them I think Some ornaments I wouldn't recommend putting on the keychain, like some of the beaded ones or just like really fiddly ones where I think that they might break. But like the rainbow or the sweater or the mushroom, I think are perfectly fine to go on a keychain. So it could be a really fun idea. And I mentioned this in my gift guide video that I posted, my most recent upload. So if you haven't watched that, this may be a bit repetitive if you have, but if you haven't watched it, I do chat about that in that video. So yeah, I have a more classic color rainbow here. I knit a more retro one, which one of my friends really liked, so I'm glad someone really liked the color combination of this one because I wasn't too sure. And then I have this one, which is my personal favorite. I added one to my bag as a little charm, like a bag charm with this keychain. This one, which is really fun. It's like a more bright, playful color combination. And this pattern, the last thing I'll mention about this mini rainbow pattern is it's great for the tiniest of scraps because you use the most for the top of the rainbow here, but as you're working decreases, you have to change colors every 2 rounds. So by the time you get to the blue or the purple, you're really not using a ton of yarn at all for this pattern. So it's really great to use even the tiniest bit of scraps. And again, you don't have to do like a rainbow Roy G. Biv color sequence. You can change it to whatever you want and experiment with colors. So yeah, I'd recommend this pattern if you have not a lot of scraps left and you just want to knit something pretty quick. This has been a really fun pattern. The next ones that I want to chat about are these little hats that I self-drafted. I think it was maybe 2 podcast episodes ago I was showing all the different variations, and I did land on one that I really like. So I have one pom-pom hat, and then I have one with 2 pom-poms. So this is self-drafted, but it's very simple. I just cast it on 28 stitches, and then I worked 4 rounds of 1x1 rib for the 2 pom-pom version here, and then 5 rounds of 1x1 rib for the 1 pom-pom version, and then I worked a few rounds just in the round and stockinette, and then I worked the decreases. This one is one of my prototypes, but I still thought it worked with the 2 pom-poms, so that's not how I've been making most of them, but for these ones, I just have been decreasing every 4 stitches, and then I knit 1 round, decrease every 3 stitches, I decrease every 3 stitches. Editing Rebecca here, that is also not how I did the decreases, so please just check out my Ravelry notes for the detailed instructions. And then that's how you get the decreases at the top of the hat, and then I add a pom-pom on afterwards. And these ones have been really fun. You don't need a lot of yarn for these, and it's been fun to experiment with color. Yeah, hopefully I did explain that kind of clearly, but if not, I'll have the instructions on my Ravelry project page. And then the last few ones that I wanted to share today are the food ornaments. I have this pretzel, which is based off of the Cute Salty Pretzel by Julita Bielkowska, which is this one here. You're essentially just knitting a really tiny stockinette tube on 3mm needles, but then for this one I sized up to 3.5mm needles. And after that, you cast off stitches, and then you fold it into the shape of a pretzel, and then you have to seam it at 3 different points. You seam it here, on the side as well, and then along the top. And then for this one, just to add a little bit more pizzazz, make it a bit more fancy, I sewed on these clear seed beads. And then for this one, I alternated between the colors every 2 rounds, and I did that by doing the color change, so it was a bit more seamless by slipping the first stitch, so you can kind of see it here, which worked out because of that. It also created a curved shape, so you could just naturally curve it into the shape of a pretzel, and it was fine. But I probably won't knit this ever again because it was so tedious to do the color changes on such a tiny circumference. So yeah, I probably won't ever knit another one. This is going to be one of a kind. And then I seamed it in the same way. So these pretzels are really fun. I've been knitting some more Pop-Tarts, which is another self-drafted pattern. Super simple as well. You just knit stockinette in the round on 4mm needles. I cast on, I think, 32 stitches, and then I worked 24 rounds. And then after that, I Kitchener stitch the top closed. I insert a little bit of cardboard to add some structure, and then I add a little bit of that pillow stuffing as well on either side, just to make it a bit more soft. And then I also cut some felt into the shape of the frosting of the Pop-Tart, sew on these tube beads, and then sew that on top of the Pop-Tart, and then Kitchener stitch the bottom closed afterwards. So this one has been really fun, and I love using these tube beads because I've had these tube beads since I was a very young child, so I'm glad to finally use them up. And then I've been using those as well on these donuts that I made. This one I made last year. And looking at it this year, I realized that I'm not that happy with how I seamed the tube beads on, how I sewed them on. So I'm gonna redo this one. And yeah, I'm not that happy with this one, but the new and improved version is this one where the beads are a little bit more spread out, and I also tighten it a little bit, the stitch a little bit, or not the stitch, but I guess I tighten the thread a little bit after each bead, so it's a lot more secure than the first one that I did last year. And this is the Tiny Little Donut pattern by Julie Williams. And this one I modified quite extensively to get this shape and this construction. So that one is knit flat. You start off by knitting the top color here, so whatever you want your frosting color to be. And then you work decreases until you reach the midpoint of the donut, and then you switch color to whatever color you want the bottom of the donut to be, and then you work increases. And then after that, you Kitchener stitch the top close, and then you mattress stitch the side. But I modified it so I could work the donut in the round on double pointed needles, so I wouldn't have to do the mattress stitch up the side. And then I also worked an additional, I think, 3 rounds of increases. So this donut is a lot bigger than what the pattern is, because if you see the pattern, it's like this little tiny donut, I think for little dolls, but I wanted to make it a little bit bigger. And I think I also modified the needle size. It's on 4mm needles. I think in the pattern it's 2.25 or 2.5, so quite a few changes, but again, I'll put it in my Ravelry notes. So all of these ornaments have been really fun to knit up, and yeah, I'm excited to put up my tree. I haven't put up my tree yet, but it will be filled with more knit ornaments. So that's kind of what I've been up to the last month or two, and why my garment knitting has been a little bit light, because I've just been so focused on those, but it's just been so fun. It's been an explosion of color, a lot of creativity coming up with the color combinations, and I really like working on those small pieces because they're really quick wins. A lot of them just take a few hours to knit up, so you can have quite a few mushrooms or quite a few sweaters after a few hours of knitting. Or actually, not really. The sweaters deceivingly take a lot of time, but maybe the mushrooms and the houses and the rainbows, you can have quite a few that you can gift to friends and family for the holidays within like a few days of knitting. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been up to with all of those ornaments, and I just wanted to share them because yeah, I'm really happy and I'm really proud of them. So that was all for my finished objects. And then we can move on to my garment whips, which haven't been receiving a lot of attention, but I do have some updates to share on them. So the first one I'll chat about is my Jenny jacket V-neck. I have it here, and I've made quite a bit of progress on this jacket, all things considered, with the ornaments. So here I am with the Jenny jacket. My work is a bit scrunched up on these needles, but yeah, we're almost done with the body of the jacket. I am working on the 1x1 ribbing for the bottom right now. So the Jenny jacket is an all-over textured stitch jacket or cardigan. It's this all-over smock stitch. It has shaping along the back, and then you pick up stitches, then you work the front pieces, and then you join the body, and then you're just working smock stitch. And I mentioned in my last podcast episode that I cast on stitches for a size small, and I was really going back and forth between extra small and small. Well, I went back again. So after I worked a little bit of the size small, I was really starting to second guess myself because I was reading that the Jenny jacket grows like over a third in size or almost a third in size after blocking. I did block the top part already because I wanted to see how it fit, but I wasn't sure if the body isn't going to look like this. I think it's going to look bigger because I haven't blocked that part yet. So then I was thinking, I'm really worried that it's going to be too big in size small. And I wanted this to be a little bit more of a fitted cardigan, kind of like my April cardigan. So I ended up frogging back and then casting on no stitches for the extra small at the underarm. But I made a grave mistake, which was so unfortunate. But actually, it wasn't that long. I think it was only like a night or two of knitting maybe. But what I did was after I frogged back, I put the two front panels and then the back panel back on my needles, but it was kind of squished. It was, I think, even a smaller cable than this one, which was really dumb. I don't know why I did that. So they were kind of squished on this needle, and I did not realize that I never joined the right front when I was rejoining the work again. So I was just working the body smock stitch on the back and the left panel for maybe like 2 or 3 smock stitches before I realized. So yeah, that was really unfortunate and a really stupid mistake, but I did that when it was later on in the evening. So I just wasn't really paying attention and it was darker outside, and yeah, honestly, just a stupid mistake. And so I had to frog back and then cast on properly. So I was joining the right front, and then here we are, almost done the body. With the Jenny jacket, and actually I think all the other Jenny series, so there's the Jenny sweater and then the Jenny jacket, which has the crew neck. Those are knit bottom up, and then this one is knit top down, the v-neck version. And when you switch from the smock stitch to the 1x1 rib, here you're gonna see I actually inserted a lifeline because I wasn't sure if this is the length that I wanted. I ended up cropping this by, I think, 3 centimeters. I knit to 41 centimeters from the back. I think you're supposed to knit to 45, but I knit to 41. So I just wasn't sure about that, so that's why I added the lifeline, but I am happy with it, so I guess I could take it out. But that's besides the point. When you switch from the smock to the 1x1 rib, you have to work quite a few decreases. You are decreasing every 6 stitches as you're doing your first round of ribbing. And then you're also sizing down to 3.5 millimeter needles. And I don't really like when ribbing cinches in along my hips. I just really don't like how it looks on my body type or like my body proportions. So that's why I always do like a split hem, or I never size down the needle size because I just don't like when it cinches in. So I was talking to my friends who knit the Jenny sweater and the Jenny jacket, because I'm doing this as a year-long knit along with 3 other friends, and I asked them if they think that those were necessary. So because the Jenny jacket and the Jenny sweater are knit from the bottom up, you're doing the reverse. So you're increasing, I would assume, maybe a similar ratio, like every 6 stitches when you finish the rib before you go into the smock. But because I'm doing it top down, I was decreasing that much. And I thought that that was quite a lot. I don't have to do that for any other, I haven't had to do that for any other sweater pattern that I've done before. But they were all saying that if they think that if you didn't do that, the ribbing would flare out. I think it has to do with maybe how the smock stitch will expand after blocking, I want to say. So I ended up doing that, and I think so far, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell because it's on the needles, but I actually don't think it cinches in as much as I was expecting, considering you're decreasing that many stitches across one round. I think, yeah, it looks pretty well balanced. So that was an interesting feature of the Jenny jacket. I wasn't expecting all of those increases before you do the ribbing, but I would say I'm about halfway through the ribbing. It has a pretty long bottom ribbing panel. It's around 8 centimeters, so I'm about halfway. And then after I finish the 1x1 rib, I think I might actually go on to the double knitting for the button band. just to change it up, and then I'll continue on with the sleeves. I'm really hoping that I can finish this before the end of the year, which was the goal. And my 3 other friends that have worked on this knit along with me, one is almost finished, Tar finished already, and then my 2 other friends are, I think, almost finished as well. So yeah, I have a lot of catching up to do, and I'm really hoping that I can finish this by the end of the year. So trying to make as much progress as I can on that one. And then the next whip that I wanted to share is my Barco Bolero. So this is my Barco Bolero. This was a late summer knit pattern that I mentioned, and now it's almost December and I am still working on it. It's really not that much knitting, but I have kind of just I'm not that excited about the pattern anymore, to be honest. Not because I don't like how it looks, but I had to do some changes. I mentioned it in my last podcast episode. I had to do some changes because I thought that the pickup ratio for the sleeves was really strange. It almost ended up being 1 out of every 2 stitches. So you're skipping a stitch for the pickup ratio, which I just thought was a little bit strange. And so I I picked up stitches for a size medium, even though I'm knitting a size extra small. And then I also worked a different rate of decreases. Thankfully, I'm happy that my past self added these stitch markers so I can see like the rate that I was decreasing, but I didn't write it down when I was working on it. And so I've been kind of dreading is such a strong word, but I've just been not motivated to work on this Bolero because I don't want to replicate, or I don't want to put in the work to replicate the sleeve on the other side because I forgot how I did it. So yeah, I've kind of just had the one sleeve here, and hopefully I work on it soon. But yeah, just haven't been that excited about this whip. The Barco Bolero is, I have some fluff there. The Barco Bolero is a pattern by Anne-Sophie Sorensen, and it's knit top down, and it's a super cropped sweater. You cast on stitches for the back panel, and then you work the back panel, you work the front panel identically, and then you join in the round for just a tiny little section here before you cast off, and then you Kitchener stitch the top parts of the shoulder, and then that's when you pick up stitches to work the sleeve. And then the sleeve has this bell shape to it, like a very gentle bell shape to it, and that's achieved with decreases here. But then after that you change the needle size 2 different times to increase the width of the sleeve. So I don't have that much to share on this Bolero because I think I was almost done the sleeve, so I just continued working the sleeve, and now I'm on the cast off, and I am thinking instead of the I-cord bind off that I did for the bottom of the Bolero here, I am gonna either do 1 round of purl stitch or just bind off and knit stitch like the pattern, just so it kind of balances out with this top part here, which has a little bit of a rolled hem. I was thinking of adding the I-cord, but based off of how it worked up for the body, it is a little bit bulky. So I'm thinking I might just do, a knit bind off for the bottom, which will be easy for me to remember for the second sleeve. So I don't have too much progress on this Bolero. I was hoping to finish it earlier on in the fall, but I just haven't really been working on it, haven't really been too excited by it, but I am committed to finishing it. So hopefully soon, but that's a little small update on the Barco Bolero. The next whip that I wanted to share is, I'll maybe mention the Marie pillow. I have a really minor update on this one as well, so hopefully this section of the podcast isn't boring, I hope, but I don't have too much to update on the Marie pillow either. So this was a fall knitting plan, and I'm in the middle of, or quarter of a round in, but I won't backtrack, so I'll just have to show it a little bit awkwardly. So this is the Marie pillow by Petite Knit. This is an all over textured pillow. It's a garter slip stitch, and it's knit on 3mm needles with worsted weight yarn. So I'm using Lion brand Fisherman's Wool in the shade brown heather, and then I'm using Knit Picks Wool of the Andes undyed yarn for the base color, and then this one is the contrast. So this is how it's working up so far. I mean, I did work on it a decent amount, in my opinion. I just think because it's knit on 3mm needles and it's a garter slip stitch, it's just really slow to work up and it's really hard on the hands. So even though I think this is a decent amount of progress, I feel like it actually doesn't look like very much since my last podcast episode. So yeah, the garter slip stitch is, as the name suggests, there's garter stitch, and then there's also rounds of slip stitch with the brown yarn. So this is what it looks like on the right side, and then I think the wrong side actually looks really pretty. So there's not going to be that many interesting updates on this pillow because it's just a flat panel that you're knitting in this all over textured stitch. So I'm just going to mention it in my videos just so you can see like a check-in of how slow the progress actually is with this Marie pillow. But there's no shaping or anything like that with this pattern. So all I really have to share is I knit this much and that's kind of it. But I've been really enjoying working this up. It's very predictable. I know what to do for this pattern. So it's just been nice to pick up whenever I feel like I want to work some texture, but I have other textured knits now on the go. So yeah, this progress will be a little bit slow, but this is the update on my Marie pillow, and yeah, that's kind of all. Super quick update with that pattern, but I don't know how much I can say about it. So the next one is a little bit more interesting, I'm hoping, and it's my Peacock Cardigan by Len Holm Samso. So I have worked about half of the lace yoke, and I am really excited with how it's looking so far. The Peacock Cardigan is a top-down lace yoke cardigan knit with 4mm needles and a fingering and mohair combination. I'm using two different yarns. I'll try to unwind this to show the color combination. I'll fix it later. This is Knitting for Olive Soft Silk Mohair in the shade Dusty Moose. And then I'm holding it with this yarn that I got, which is a 100% natural wool I got it from Omomo, which is a Japanese department store, but the yarn is Hisuji Chan in the shade Natural. Or Hisuji Chan Natural, I think, and then it would be an undyed shade. And this is more of like a heavy fingering light sport, I would say. So I think that this fabric is denser than what is suggested in the pattern. So I wasn't too sure about it, but I actually think that it makes the lace pop quite a bit, so I am happy with it. But it is a bit of a denser fabric. The lace motif here is a pretty popular feather and fan lace motif, so I think it's a pretty simple and easy lace motif to work up. I have knit the Peacock Tee before, and this motif is kind of the same but a little bit different. That one you're working it in the round, but this one, because you're knitting it flat, you need to read the lace chart forwards and backwards, so that kind of caused a little bit of confusion at the beginning, but definitely got the hang of it as I'm now halfway through the yoke. But something I will mention is the feather and fan motif has these little like textured nubs, I want to call them. So it's the row after you do the yarn over. It's just, I think the way that you knit the way that you knit the yarn over, you get this little raised bump at the bottom. But I was finding that your tension really impacts how much that texture pops, because I hadn't really knit a lot on this cardigan for a few weeks, and then I picked it up and then I knit an eyelet round, and I think maybe my tension was a little bit loose at that point. I don't know, maybe it was just like my mood that day, or just because I hadn't worked on this project for a little bit. So I had a much looser tension for that row, and it really impacted how the lace looked afterwards, that little raised bump there. It was basically not noticeable and it looked really odd. I'll put a picture on the screen. I feel like it's kind of hard to tell in the picture because it's 2D, but when you see it in person, I think you could definitely see that it looked different from the rest. And I did the pattern in the same way. It was just my tension was a little bit different. So yeah, I just, now when I'm working the eyelet round, I make sure to do that round a little bit tighter, have a bit of a tighter tension, and then the row afterwards where you're purling back, I also just pull a little bit tighter on the yarn as I'm working that, and I find that it makes that fan motif really pop. Or I don't know if it's the feather piece or the fan. I think maybe the feather. I'm not really sure. But it makes this part of the motif really pop afterwards if you do that. So just a small recommendation if you are doing this pattern. And then once I'm finished with this lace, then you work the rest of the cardigan in stockinette. So I'm trying to time it with my next cast on that I'll share. So once I finish the lace for this yoke, then I'll work the lace for that one. So I am a little bit sad to finish working up this lace because it was really fun to knit up, but we'll be glad to have some more relaxing stockinette on this project. And yeah, it's been really fun to knit up so far. Definitely find the lace a lot more relaxing to knit up now that I know the lace chart a little bit better, and really excited to have this in the wardrobe, though I have a long way to go. I'm still only halfway through the lace yoke, which leads me to my 2 cast-ons that I wanted to share in this episode. So my next lace pattern is the Kuutar wrap cardigan, which is a pattern by Sari Nordlund. And that wrap cardigan I have mentioned in my seasonal planning videos, I think 3 or 4 times now. I've mentioned it quite a bit since I started my YouTube channel, and I just never get around to casting it on during that season, so I just carry it forward into the next season, which really just showed that I wanted to eventually knit this wrap cardigan. I just didn't prioritize the time for it. So this year I was like, nope, I really need to knit this cardigan, just because I've been telling myself that I'm going to knit it for so long, so I just need to cast it on. So this is what I got so far. I am using Sandnes Sunday in the shade 1045, which is a light gray, or it's a medium gray, and then I'm holding it with Drops Kid Silk in the shade 10, I think gray. And the mohair is a little bit of a cooler tone, like almost a blue gray, and it's darker than the fingering weight merino that I'm holding it with. So I think that the finished fabric here has a bit of a marl to it, but I think it's not going to distract from the lace motif that I'm going to work. You can just see the mohair a little bit more, which is nice. I do like how it's looking. So this is the back panel. So the Kuutar wrap cardigan is knit top down, and it has the wrap cardigan design at the front, and there's the Kuutar lace along the fronts of the wrap panels. But then the rest of the cardigan, like the back and then the sleeves, are all knit in stockinette. So this is how the back panel is looking so far. It's essentially just a rectangular panel of stockinette, and I don't really love that fit on me. I've knit the Stockholm sweater v-neck before, and that has a similar construction where the back panel is just knit in a rectangle, and then you pick up stitches, and then you work shaping along the front panels here to get a more comfortable fit. But I found that the Stockholm sweater, I just didn't really like how it fit along the shoulders. I think maybe it just doesn't suit my shoulder proportions that well. I much prefer when there's a trapezoidal shaped back with short rows. So I much prefer when the back panel has the short rows rather than the front panels. But I thought I'm not opposed to trying out the design again and see if it differs in a cardigan. So the back panel is just really simple to knit up because you're knitting this just straight down. You're not doing any shaping. And I ended up changing the needle size. So I'm using the same yarn weights for this pattern, so fingering and mohair. I think Sari uses knitting for olive merino and soft silk mohair, but it's still the same weights with these two, but I did change the needle size. I would say that the original Kuutar wrap cardigan, it's knit on 5mm needles with fingering and mohair, so it creates this very lightweight kind of sheer fabric. It's very feminine, it's very dainty, and I still wanted that really lightweight airy gauge, I guess, but I didn't want it to be that see-through. So I am knitting on 4.5mm needles instead of 5, and I am not achieving gauge. I think the gauge is 17 stitches for every 10 centimeters, and mine is 19 stitches on 4.5. So I also sized up. I'm knitting a size medium, and I'm hoping that the finished object is somewhere in between an extra small and small sizing. I'm kind of just winging that a little bit because I don't know if I'm going to be able to modify the cardigan that much with the front panels to make it fit, but I'm hoping that it's going to fit a little bit smaller than the size medium because of the smaller needle size. And I think that creates still a really lightweight and airy fabric. It's not stiff or tight or anything like that because it is on 4.5, but it's just a little bit more of a denser fabric. It's not as see-through. So I'm hoping to make a few more modifications to this wrap cardigan. The cardigan has like a higher tie at the front. There's also a I-cord tie that wraps around the outside. I'm hoping to modify it so it wraps around the inside, but I will talk about those when we get there with this cardigan. So far I just have the back panel here, and I'm liking this combination together. And then the last whip that I wanted to chat about is another new cast-on, and it is a baby knit. So my boyfriend's friend is having a baby in February, and so I don't have that many people in my life that have had a baby since I've started knitting. So when I heard that they were having a baby, I was like, oh, I definitely need to make something for the baby. So the baby shower is at the end of November, so I need to finish this kind of soon, but also I don't think it's going to take too long. I decided to knit the Aosta sweater baby by the Knit Pearl Girl. This is a pattern that I've had in my pattern library for a really long time. When I test knit for Sophie back in 2022, I got this pattern thinking that when somebody eventually has a baby in my life, I would love to knit them the sweater. So I don't know that much about baby sizing since not a lot of people in my life have had babies. I haven't really held a lot of babies before, so I don't really know about sizing that well, but I was talking to my mom about what to do. So I was thinking of knitting the sweater, and then I also showed her the cardigan. And then she said if you were knitting the smaller sizes for like a newborn or like a 3-month-old baby, it would be better to maybe knit the cardigan because a lot of like first-time parents, maybe they get a little bit nervous like putting the sweater over the head of the baby. And also it's just a little bit more practical rather than the sweater. But I thought that the sweater silhouette was really cute on the Aosta sweater baby. I think it looks a lot cuter than the cardigan. They're both cute, but I think that the buttons along the top here is just so cute and little silhouette. So I am this may not be the most functional, but I'm thinking it's going to be really cute for our friends who are going to be first-time parents. So yes, I'm going for the sweater. And I'm using the leftovers from my sweater number 14 v-neck, so the Lion Brand Wool Ease, which I think was going to be good because it's 75% acrylic, 25% wool, so it's a little bit softer. And then I'm going to tell them that it would be better to hand wash it, but obviously once you have a baby, you have very limited time, so they can also put it in the washing machine if they have to, because it can go in the washing machine. So I'm using this shade here. It's like a nice light beige. And here is the sweater so far. I just cast it on yesterday afternoon, so making some progress. The Aosta sweater baby is a top-down raglan construction, and you're knitting it flat here because you have the front the button placket that you're knitting as well. And then once you're finished knitting that button placket, then you knit in the round for the rest of the sweater. So with this pattern, I am not achieving gauge. It's been a while since I've knit a pattern from Sophie of the Knit Pearl Girl, and she mentioned in this pattern that she does have a tighter gauge, so most people have to size down. And so this is supposed to be knit on 4mm needles, and I had to size down to 3.5mm needles, and even then I'm still, I think 2 stitches off from the gauge. I still have 2 few stitches, so like my gauge is a little bit bigger than Sophie's, even on 3.5mm needles. So I am going to knit the newborn size and hope that it turns out for a 3-month-old baby. But I'm not totally sure about sizing. I'm not sure if these proportions are going to be right, but I figured that the baby will be able to fit the sweater eventually because it's going to be a little bit bigger than a newborn size. The baby's born in February, and so I wanted to knit either the newborn or the 3-month size, because if I knit the 6-month size, then I think by the time they would fit it, it would be like July, August. So I wanted to knit the smaller size, so even though the baby can't wear it for as long, it would work better for the season, I guess. So all to say, I'm knitting the newborn size, hoping for the 3-month size, and here's my progress so far. You cast on stitches at the top, and this is the only modification that I've made to it so far. You're supposed to knit 6 rounds of ribbing, but I preferred the cast on edge of the wrong side over the right side. A super minor modification, but this is what the top of the ribbing is supposed to look like if you did 6 rounds of ribbing. Like, this would be your right side, but I preferred the more, in my opinion, it's a cleaner cast on edge here. So I just worked 5 rounds of ribbing, but it's not going to change the way that you construct the buttonhole at all. Like, it's a 1 row difference, so I think it's fine, but that's the only modification that I've made. And then you just work the sweater with raglan increases, and then this all over Andalusian stitch, which is this really fun texture stitch with just knit and purl stitch. I'm sure many people have knit the Aosta sweater before from the Knit Pearl Girl. If you're watching this video, it was a super popular pattern. It was my first sweater pattern when I was knitting, so I'm quite familiar with this stitch, and I just think it's going to be really cute at the end. So I have a few weeks to knit this up for the baby shower at the end of the month, and then maybe if I have yarn left over, I might knit like a chunky hat and then make some pom-poms with the leftover yarn. But we'll see if I have yarn left and if I have time. But yeah, this is the Aosta sweater baby, and it's turning out so cute, and I'm excited to have a little miniature sweater to gift, or miniature for me, but properly sized for a baby. So that was everything for this podcast episode. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much if you reached this point in the video. I'll be knitting away at all the ornaments. Like I mentioned, I have that market coming up on November 30th to December 1st. It's called the Welcome Market. Thank you to everyone who's come to my last few markets. It's been really fun being able to chat with people. I'm so surprised and so happy that people came to the market to chat. So yeah, thank you so much if you came. And yeah, no pressure to come to that market, but I will be working away at the ornaments for that one. So I'm probably not gonna have too much progress on all of my garments, but you know, I'll work on everything at my own pace, no pressure or anything like that. So yeah, I'm not sure when I will film my next podcast episode. So until my next episode, happy knitting.